On this episode, we meet Lina Bustos Elias, a multi-talented producer for Golf Channel and PGA Tour Live. Lina left her native Colombia at the age of 17, moving to the U.S. with a golf scholarship to Georgia State. After a stop at CNN Español, Lina arrived in Orlando at Golf Channel, and she's forged a career that combines her love for the game with her willingness to adapt to an evolving industry. You'll hear about the many roles she plays as a producer, her favorite memories from 15 years in golf broadcasting, how she sees women represented in the industry, and how her language skills have recently opened new doors. Plus, thoughts on what the Live series means for the freelance community and the PGA Tour's plans for the future. My name is Whit Watson, and this is Media Credentials. I'm a sports announcer who's worked a lot of places. This podcast will peel back the layers of sports media and show you how the sausage gets made. Through interviews with industry pros and my own experience, you'll understand why you're seeing what you're seeing and who's responsible for it. Your media credentials have been approved. One of the selfish pleasures of creating the podcast is the chance to reconnect with friends in the business and turn the tables a little bit, put them out front. You probably don't know Lina Bustos Elias, but if you've watched golf's biggest events over the last 15 years, guaranteed you've seen her work. Lina creates many of the highlight packages and breakdowns you see on Golf Channel programming like Golf Central and Live From at the big events. She also freelances for the PGA Tour at their streaming PGA Tour Live shows, performing similar roles. Every golf studio show and live tournament has a lead producer, the person who's responsible for the overall content. That one person cannot do it by themselves. They need people like Lina to supply them with additive content, those highlight packages and breakdown segments that I just spoke of. Oftentimes, this means that the lead analyst, like a Brandel Chambly or Paul Azinger or Trevor Immelman, goes directly to a person like Lina and says, "This is what I need." And Lina's job is to translate that request into video. That requires technical knowledge, golf knowledge, the ability to discern what shots are important and which ones can be ignored. Sometimes she has to listen to a player's press conference or a one-on-one interview and pick out which sound bites are the most relevant. Again, that's both TV expertise and golf expertise, as well as editorial judgment. The people who prove themselves to be good and quick at those skills have a critical role in golf production on TV. The lead producer, the director, in fact, the entire network is placing a lot of trust in this person. And those who can reliably get it right are essential in our little golf TV ecosystem. And Lina is one of those people. Golf brought Lina to the U.S. from Colombia when she was 17 years old. And Golf Channel and the PGA Tour are better for it. She knows the game, she knows the business, and she's one of everybody's favorite people to work with. And I think you'll see why in this interview. Lina, the first question I ask is probably going to be the toughest one for you to answer. What exactly do you do? Give me your job description.
My gosh, that's yes, that is a crazy question because obviously now that I've entered the freelance world, I feel like I don't have an official title. When people ask me, I say I'm a TV producer, and that obviously entails so many things. So right now, as a TV producer, I work in golf, and I'm involved with all the different live shows that we have for golf. So PGA Tour Live, when we do our streams of live golf, golf studio shows, Golf Central shows, Live From shows are in the big weeks. So basically, as a TV producer, it's just being involved in the content creation for these shows, behind the scenes, and all that entails. I know that's a lot to unpack, but that's like the short version, I guess.
Right. So, but specifically, what are you qualified to do? There's a lot of different jobs in the truck or in the control room. So what kinds of tasks have you learned how to do over the years?
Okay, so over the years, in the shows that I do, one of the big ones is highlights producer. If you watch Golf Central shows or live from shows, all of the I would say like the bulk of the content is highlights. So a highlight producer. I've been a highlight supervisor for the new people, the new kids that come in. Now I'm more of a tape producer. So that's just helping a tape producer or an ISO producer. And that's basically supporting the producer of a show and helping them with content. So if they say, hey, John Rahm just shot 29 on the back nine, I have a package ready for them of the best shots of John Rahm on the back nine. Or so and so just gave an interview, give me the best 2 minutes that you heard. So putting together the 2 minutes of sound. So I think when you work in TV and golf TV, you're kind of like you can be a highlights producer for a show, a sound producer for a show, a graphics producer for a show. So there's just so many jobs, and the jobs that I've done throughout the years mainly is just highlight producer and tape producer.
And how many of those different jobs were you trained to do? And how many did you just say yes to and then figure out how to do it?
I think it's half and half. I think I don't know how it is, and I can speak for other places of work, but like as far as Golf Channel, when I started, I was a PA and I had people that trained me. I shadowed people. So I would say that half of it, they train you. And that's just shadowing people and you kind of learn by watching them. And then half of that is sink or swim. They just throw you in there and you just kind of have to figure it out on your own. Actually, more than half and half, I would say, is maybe 60% sink or swim, 40% train you.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Let's back up. Where are you from and how did you get started in broadcasting?
I'm originally from Colombia, South America. And I say South America because many times when I introduce myself to people and I say I'm from Colombia, they think it's Columbia, South Carolina. So I had to say that. So I'm originally from Colombia. I got started in the business. I came to the U.S. when I was 17 years old on a golf scholarship, and I played golf at Georgia State. And ironically, I went to school for print journalism, and I have not worked. I haven't had a single print job in my life. But while I was there, I graduated from Georgia State, and then my first job out of college was at a cable company that created promos for like channels like Cinemax and Movie City and those for Latin America. So that was like my first introduction to like TV. And then through people that I met in the industry, I ended up working at CNN. So did TV there for like a year or two. And then I was always a golf nerd. Obviously, I played golf at Georgia State, and I stayed. I would be one of those people that watch the Masters on a Sunday and then tune in to live from and watch the golf and the 2 hours. And so naturally, it just clicked one day, and I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, I should work at the Golf Channel. Like, I'm watching the content; it seems cool." So I reached out to a friend of mine who still works there, Alex Lucio. She's been there in the programming department for many, many years. And she put me in touch with people in the news department. And I applied for a PA job. And I started working at Golf Channel. I interviewed and I started working with them in 2008. So that's kind of how I got started in the business. I did not go to school. I did not go to like a broadcasting school or anything like that. I just kind of stumbled upon it, I would say.
And you talked about playing golf in college. And I know that you share this with me that we've met a lot of people working at Golf Channel or working for the PGA Tour that played golf in college. It seems like every time you turn around, male or female, a lot of people played in college. How does that help you in your job?
Oh, I think it's a huge help because golf is that type of sport that I feel is so nuanced, and like you have to understand so many things of the sport, like par, bogey, birdie, things that maybe like a normal viewer wouldn't understand. I think you could watch basketball or you could watch tennis or soccer and kind of figure it out without knowing, much of the rules. But I think if you've played golf, and it doesn't have to be at the college level. I think that even if you just play golf as a fan and know the game, it definitely helps in the TV industry and the golf industry, because I feel like you're one step ahead of everybody else. Like, that was always the question when we hire new people. Like, do we need a person who knows TV production more, or do we need a person who knows golf more? And I always felt like having the golf knowledge was important. I mean, I feel like you are ahead of the game when you have somebody, when you're working in the industry, and you have people, talent or analysts come to you and they say, hey, I need a short game breakdown, or I need putts that are lipping out, or fades or draws, or whatever it is. And if you know the game, it helps you. Huge help.
Your husband is also in the industry. How did you guys meet each other?
So when my first day started working at Golf Channel, I was introduced to the team. And then my boss at the time says, "All right, Lina, you're gonna shadow Herman Elias over here." And Herman, my now husband, was the first person that I ever worked with at Golf Channel. And we always joke. He's like, "Oh, you should say that it was love at first sight." And I'm like, "No, that wasn't the case. It was more." I was like, "Okay." I was introduced to Herman, and I remember my icebreaker was, "Oh, Herman Elias. It's really Elias." He's like, "Yeah, I'm Hispanic. I'm from I'm from Colombia. He was born in Peru." So we just kind of I started asking him about his family and where he was in Peru and all that, and I think that from there, Herman just became my go-to person for any questions that I had at the time. Like, how do I download this? How do I edit this? How do I send this to the control room? Like, all my questions went through Herman. And in TV, I mean, you just have a really good group of friends. I mean, for us, we had a really good group of friends back in the day, and it became like, "Hey, did you bring lunch today?" No, I didn't. All right, let's go get lunch. So I would say that we were really, really good friends for a year before we started dating. And so, yeah, it is crazy to think. Sometimes I go back and think, oh my gosh, who would have thought that my very first day at Golf Channel, I met my husband. So that's crazy.
See, I actually knew the answer to that, but I just wanted to hear you tell the story.
Yes,
Thank you
yes,
for doing that. And
yes.
it does bring up something unique about the industry. When you
Mhm.
work the hours that we work, it's hard to have a social life with your neighbors who have a 9 to 5 job.
Mhm.
And for example, at ESPN, I was friends with all the producers and the anchors who worked the same shifts that I worked because they were the only ones that were free when I was free. So
Yeah.
it's not that uncommon. And I wonder if you feel the same way, that maybe your closest circle of friends are people in the industry who have a similar life, odd hours, and on the road a lot.
100%. And to that point too, I'm not, as you know, too, with our friends, I'm not the first part, I'm not the only TV couple in the industry either. Like, we have so many good friends that met at Golf Channel
Right.
and got married, or that came from ESPN as a couple. And, so yes, I agree 100%. When your off days are Mondays and Tuesdays, because you work Wednesday through Sunday, the golf days, you go to happy hours with your friends on Monday and Tuesdays, and nobody else is going to go out and do anything on a Monday, Tuesday, or you go play golf with them on a Monday, Tuesday. So yes, I would say that my core circle of friends, they are all in the industry. I mean, I would say 80% of my close friends are TV people.
This just occurred to me as a former college golfer who was also bilingual.
Hmm.
Did you ever, were you ever approached about working on the air for a Spanish language outlet, or did you ever consider maybe trying that path?
It's crazy that you're asking me that. When I worked at CNN, I wanted to work there because I worked at CNN in Español.
Hmm.
And I grew up watching CNN en Español in Colombia. So a lot of the talent that I saw on TV, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wanna meet this person and all that. So when I worked I remember working at CNN Español, and that was a really, really good experience for me. And then after that, I know I haven't done any Spanish media, and I think it's crazy because I've been in the country now. I've been in the U.S. for 22 years, 23 years, I want to say. So I feel like my brain now is wired a little differently too. Like I feel more comfortable sometimes even speaking in English or communicating in English, the jargon and everything than in Spanish. But that doesn't mean that I can't do it. And I think that I actually, the timing of your question, I'm going to start doing some, like for instance, next week, PGA Tour Live is going to have a Mexico Open feed in Spanish. And so me having had a relationship with them there, they approached me and said, hey, you're bilingual. We need somebody on our team. So I'm very excited because this is kind of like the first time that I'm doing, that I'm using Spanish as a second language, to do something in the industry. So I'm super excited about that.
What's your role going to be?
So it's the same thing that I do for them right now for the regular feed as an ISO producer. But it's almost like a co-producer role with one of our producers from the PGA Tour who's not bilingual. So is assisting her when our talent's speaking in Spanish. If they say in Spanish, oh yeah, when John Rahm won the Masters, hey, roll those pictures of John Rahm winning the Masters. Or when sound starts coming in Spanish, being the person that's able to pick the best 2 minutes of a soundbite in Spanish, creating content or suggesting content or those kinds of things. So I'm very excited about this. So yeah, great timing of your question, because I haven't really done anything in Spanish. I've always just done all the media in English.
Having spent a lot of time with the PGA Tour on PGA Tour Live and with Golf Channel in compounds, in control rooms, how do you feel women are represented, specifically behind the scenes in the golf broadcasting field?
When I started in 2008 in the industry, I remember in our newsroom, there was only like maybe 4 women with me. And I feel like that has changed a lot over the years. Like I work with women all the time. I see women in positions of power that have moved up the ladder. I think that it's definitely changed over the years. And I think that we are well represented in the industry. It's definitely not how it was 15 years ago when I started. So I have seen the change. I see more women in newsrooms, more PAs, more girls out of college. At PGA Tour Live, there's a lot of women who work there, and same at Golf Channel, NBC Sports. So I feel like we are well represented.
Same question now, but minority representation, diversity in the compound. How has that changed?
Now I think that's a different one. I don't see many people who, like me, maybe were not born in this country or are bilingual or from other countries, even from other parts of the world. Minorities, diversity. Now that's one that I definitely don't see a lot. It was the same 15 years ago, and I feel like it's the same now.
Among the freelance community, what has Live Golf done? Because now there is another outlet. You had PGA Tour Live and PGA Tour Entertainment. You had Golf Channel, and now there's another option. And there's a lot of baggage if you choose to go that route. How has that affected the freelance community?
I can only speak from like what you hear, because I have not worked for Live. I'm not interested in working for Live. But for the people who have gone to Live, yeah, I think it's definitely, people say, hey, if you work for Live, if you're good at your job, you can still come and you're as a freelancer, right? You can still go and work wherever you want. But I mean, that's I don't know. I'm not a big boss at either PGA Tour Live or NBC Sports, but I would feel like I think it depends. It depends on how you handle those relationships and those connections. I feel like it could definitely affect the work that you get from PGA Tour or from NBC Sports. As PGA Tour partners. But I know there's people who work for Live or have worked for Live, and they still get work at PGA Tour, NBC Sports. So I think it can work. I just think it depends on your personal relationship with the people that you are working with. I think that's kind of like the talk behind the scenes. Obviously the big thing with Live is that they pay more, and I don't judge people for going to a job where they're getting paid more. If that's what, pay more. I think they work less weeks a year. So, to each its own. Everybody can do whatever they want. But yeah, I just think it's very specific. It's very, I think it's affected maybe some people, and other people are able to work for all the entities out there.
It's a tightrope, isn't it?
Yes.
Because they are creating more jobs for people
Hmm.
like you,
Yeah.
and they do pay well.
Yeah.
But the problem about the funding never goes away. And that
Exactly.
I'm curious about your perspective in that regard. Like, it's good for the industry, but the jury is still out if this is good for golf, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. I just feel like it's so new. I'll be honest, I have not watched a single broadcast of Live Tour. It just doesn't, to me personally, yes, I guess I'm a traditionalist. I like the golf tournaments the way that they are. And I grew up watching the game the way that it is. And I'm happy with my life as a freelance. I'm happy, I worked for Golf Channel for 13 years, and now I work for the tour. My husband works for the tour too. I freelance for the tour. I mean, to me, it doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't really make a difference in the sense that I just feel like they're just putting golf tournaments out there. I don't think the viewership is there. And so I don't know what type of audiences they're reaching or anything like that with the ratings. And so for me, it's just not something that it psychs me. It's not a product that it psychs me necessarily. So, but yeah, I mean, it is out there, but I just don't know if people are watching. I don't know if people are, I really don't know. Like, I think like the tournaments that are established, the tours that are established, like the PGA Tour, the LPGA Tour, the European Tour, the product is out there, the content is out there, and I think that's what grabs the attention of the people who enjoy the game.
So when you and I go to PGA Tour Live, the current building, PGA Tour Entertainment, is at the World Golf Village. And for those who don't know, the tour is building a new production facility in Ponte Vedra Beach, right next door to their new global headquarters building.
Mm-hmm.
This year, they've already taken over, this year and last year, actually. The tour now produces the PGA Tour Champions and the Korn Ferry Tour, and those events air on Golf Channel. Where do you think all of this is leading? They're not building that facility for nothing. So where do you think this is going to go?
I don't know if the goal is to have all the golf under one building. Some people, when I go up to NBC Sports in Stanford, some people say, "Oh yeah, everything's definitely going over there." I'm excited for the opportunities that could create for everybody. Obviously, if it's a huge building, I'm sure they have some big plans. Content, shows. For those of us in the freelance world, I'm just more excited about all the opportunities that building's going to bring.
I've asked a couple of other people a similar question about remote productions. We all discovered during the pandemic that we can do this from distance. And I know that you traveled a lot for tournaments over the
Mm-hmm.
years, and you traveled for Live From, and it's fun. Being in the
Mm-hmm.
compound is fun. Being in the hotel that night is fun. Seeing everybody in one place not only builds chemistry and camaraderie, and I think makes better shows, but it's just a good time. And we're kind of pulling back from that. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that's going to continue?
I definitely think that's going to continue because once you start saving money, what's the point of being on site if it costs more money? We're going
Right.
to do it from a building. We're going to do it remotely. For me personally, I just feel bad for the new people who maybe are not going to get to experience that, everything that you just mentioned. But for me, I did 10 years of Live From on site, right? So went to the Masters, went to the US Opens, and experienced that, and it was so much fun and it was great. But because I've experienced it, to me, it's like, okay, I'm good. I'm good now. I prefer a cleaner facility instead of being in a dirty compound and using the porta johns and all that stuff. I've done it. It was fun. We traveled with our friends. We went out. We had fun. And for me, it's like, it's like another chapter that's just kind of turned the page. But the people, but I understand how the people who have been on the road covering like the LPGA for so many years or the Korn Ferry Tour are now in a building. And so from their perspective, because that's what they've been doing all all their life and going to some really cool locations, Hawaii and, California and all that, yes, I can understand how going to a building, it's definitely not as appealing as being on site. But, the industry is evolving, and it's all about how can you do the same, how can you make the same product and, costing less and with the same quality. And so, yes, it's definitely, if it costs more to be on the road, it's just not going to happen.
People outside the industry really don't appreciate indoor plumbing. You have no idea how much of a big deal
Yes,
that is.
exactly. Or like, like cafeteria and like, exactly. It's just, to me, being in the building, I like him more.
What are the best parts of what you do, and what are the parts that you view as the biggest challenges?
The best parts of what I do, I really to this day pinch myself sometimes. And the newest one, the last time I did that was Sunday of the Masters. I'm sitting in playback 9 at NBC Sports, and it's like 2:30. The final group is teeing off, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh my gosh! Like I'm just thinking to myself, I'm getting paid to sit here and watch the final round of the Masters and then do a 2-hour show reacting to what happened. So, because really, when you're doing a post-game show, yes, you can only prepare so much, right? Until you know who's going to win the Masters or any tournament. You don't have a lead story. You don't know your graphics, your sound, your opening shots, any of that stuff. So I'm just sitting there thinking, wow, I really can just kick back and watch the Masters. And then maybe with 3 holes to play, then you start kind of thinking of what's going to happen. So I think that getting paid to do something that you enjoy and you love, it's a huge plus that not many people have out there. I've never had a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job, and I can't imagine what that's like. And people family members who like have Monday through Friday 9 to 5 jobs, it's like, oh my gosh, but you're never off on the weekends and this and that. And I'm like, that's honestly, that doesn't make a difference to me. Like, as long as me and my husband have like a day or two together, and her mom works in the industry, so that works for us. So like our weekends end up being like Monday and Tuesday instead of Saturday and Sunday. I will trade that for, I would rather work on the weekends doing what I love to do than work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, doing something that just doesn't fulfill me. And obviously, I've been doing this for 15 years. And I think all of the people that have been doing this, just, you have to love what you do to be in this industry, I guess, because then on the other side of that is the fact that you do work long hours. If a golf tournament has a rain delay, now you're on the air longer hours. You go on the air later. That means you're going to get home later. So I think it's the same thing that I love about what I do. It can also be the curse of you work longer hours and you work on weekends. And yes, sometimes you do miss out on family events or birthdays or things like that. So I think that's one of those. But I think the people that I've met throughout the years, I mean, I think that's a huge plus. Like I said earlier, like a lot of my good friends are in the industry, meeting people, traveling. I think that's something that I really like. But yeah, I would say that sometimes the long hours, it's what makes you sometimes be like, oh my gosh, I know I wish I work 8 hours instead of 13, 14 hours, but it's worth it in the end.
Are there any bucket list events that you haven't worked that you hope you can someday?
I don't know if necessarily that I haven't worked, because I really have worked all the big events in golf, but maybe be on site at certain events. So I would love to go to an Open Championship, and I can't believe that last year I didn't figure out, like, oh my God, St. Andrews 150th Open, and I just didn't take the week off to go over there. But I think the one event that I haven't been to, I've worked it from studio, but I have not been to an Open in person, and I would love to go as a fan, because that's the other thing. You work a lot of these events, but you don't get the chance to enjoy them as fans because you're working. So I think that I would love to attend a Ryder Cup as a fan, and I would love to attend an Open Championship as a fan.
And lastly, is there any advice that you would give to young people who are considering entering the industry, male, female, no matter where they're from? What would you tell them?
I get asked this question a lot in Stanford when I meet the young kids that they hire as PAs. And the thing that I tell them, going back to the schedule and all that, is don't get in this industry unless you absolutely love what you do, because your hours, you're going to work weekends. If you're ready to work weekends and long hours, and that's not a problem for you because you love what you do, then do it. But especially a lot of my girlfriends or young girls, I'll say, if you want to get home at a decent time, or if you want to have kids, or if you want that normal family life, it's not the industry for you. But if that's not a problem for you, and if you love it, then go for it. That's always what I say. It's just like, I feel like the TV industry you have to be committed to it. So if the hours and the time, it's not going to be an issue for you, then go for it.
In just a few seconds, we'll have some closing thoughts on this episode, so stay tuned. If you're enjoying it so far, please consider subscribing or sharing and leave a review. Let me know what you'd like to hear in the future on Media Credentials. My favorite topics in this interview were the first one and the last one. When Lina talked about the many different definitions of producer, that's good insight into how sports TV is created these days. The roles are more nebulous than ever, and those who can adapt and learn new skills are more valuable than ever. My mantra of always say yes only works if you can actually learn the job, and I think Lina described that beautifully. On the last topic, when I asked her what advice she would give to someone new to the industry or considering it, she said that she gets that question a lot from the young college-age kids who come to Golf Channel or the PGA Tour at an entry level. I hear it all the time as well, usually from high school or college students who want to be on the air. Since my role is different from Lina's, my advice is slightly different, but we do share a few planks in our platforms. Her point about commitment is well taken. Our schedules are never 9 to 5. The hours are awkward. As we discussed, having a social life can be a challenge, especially if you're young and single. Lina said you have to really love what you're doing and be willing to commit. If you can check all those boxes, then Lina and I both have the same advice. Go for it. Thanks again for listening to Media Credentials. For examples of my work, including video and audio clips, a blog, and my contact page, check out whitwatson.com.